It was 7:42 p.m. when I finally stopped pretending they might still show up. The candles on my cake had melted into soft pools of wax, tilting like tired soldiers. The frosting was beginning to sweat under the kitchen light, and the air smelled faintly of sugar and silence. 29 years old. No calls. No knocks. No laughter from the hallway. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the slow tick of the clock above the sink. Sometimes the people you wait for are the same ones who teach you how to stand alone. Watch her quiet revenge unfold, from one forgotten birthday to a $35 million lesson. My mother had promised she'd stop by after work. My sister said she'd try if she wasn't too tired. My brother texted a single emoji that morning, the thumbs up one, as if that covered love, presence, and memory all at once. I stared at my phone, watching the screen dim again and again, hoping maybe the glow would mean something. It didn't. At some point I whispered to myself, "It's fine. They probably got busy." But even my voice sounded weak, the kind of lie women tell themselves when hope feels cheaper than truth. I leaned over the cake, the cheap grocery store one I'd bought myself, and read the words written in pink icing. "Happy birthday, Maria." It almost looked like someone else's name. I thought about blowing out the candles just to end the pity. But then I heard it, a faint knock. It wasn't the confident kind that family uses, not the impatient kind of a delivery person. It was soft, hesitant. I froze, heart lifting and sinking in the same second. When I opened the door, I saw a man from the next apartment, mid-40s maybe, still in his work shirt, holding a lighter in his hand. "Sorry to bother you," he said gently. "I saw the lights flicker earlier. Thought maybe you were celebrating something." I smiled the way lonely people do, small, polite, careful not to let gratitude look like desperation. "Just my birthday," I said. "But it seems I'm the only one who remembered." He smiled, the kind of smile that understands disappointment. "Mind if I help you light the candles?" I nodded. He stepped inside, and the scent of rain from his jacket filled the room. Together we stood over the cake, and he flicked the lighter once, twice, until small flames appeared again. The kitchen looked warmer immediately, the shadows retreating a little. "You shouldn't have to celebrate alone," he said quietly. "I'm used to it," I replied, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like mine. He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his eyes softened. "Still," he said, "you deserve the light." I thanked him, embarrassed by how much those words touched me. After he left, I sat at the table again, the candles dancing faintly in front of me. I didn't make a wish. I didn't believe in them anymore. Instead I whispered, "Remember this feeling." That's when I reached for my old notebook. It was something I hadn't opened in years. Leather cover, pages yellowed at the edges, still carrying faint perfume from better days. I wrote a single line. They didn't forget. They just didn't care. And then, beneath it, "Never wait for people who enjoy your silence." I didn't know then that those two lines would become my beginning, not of forgiveness but of something colder, stronger. I turned on the TV just to fill the emptiness. The voices from some late-night show drifted through the room, laughing, clapping, pretending everything was fine. My own laughter used to sound like that, eager, apologetic, performative. But that night I didn't join in. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. I went to close the window and noticed the family across the courtyard. Parents, children, grandparents, all sitting together around their dining table. The flicker of their candles reflected through the rain, steady and bright. I wondered if my family even remembered what my kitchen looked like. At 8:13 my phone finally buzzed. It was my sister. "Sorry, something came up. Hope you had fun." No heart emoji. No call. Just that. I typed "It's okay," but didn't send it. I locked the screen and placed the phone face down beside the cake. The flame wavered in the draft, then steadied itself again, stubborn little thing refusing to die. I poured myself a glass of cheap wine, the kind that burns a little at the back of your throat. "To family," I whispered, "who taught me what absence sounds like." That's when the building's power flickered. The lights dimmed for a second and I was alone with just the candlelight again. The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. My reflection in the window looked older than it should, tired, worn, but strangely calm. I remembered my mother's words from years ago, the ones she used when she wanted to remind me of my place. "Maria, you always take things too personally." Maybe she was right. Maybe caring deeply was a flaw. But standing there, staring at my own reflection, I thought, maybe that flaw could become my weapon. I blew out the candles one by one, slow and deliberate. Smoke curled upward like small ghosts. My kitchen sank into darkness. But inside my chest something steady lit up. Not hope. Not anger either. Something sharper, a quiet decision. I cleaned the table, boxed the leftover cake and placed it in the fridge as if saving it for evidence. Then I sat by the window, notebook open on my lap, pen tapping against the paper. What began as a list of birthdays forgotten turned into something else. A record. Each name written carefully, each memory assigned a page. Page 1, Mom, too busy to care. Page 2, Anna, sister, forgot again. Page 3, David, brother, thumbs up message. By the time I reached the last page, the rain had stopped. The silence felt different now, not empty but waiting. From the hallway, I heard faint laughter from the apartment next door. The man's voice, deep and kind. He was talking to someone on the phone saying, "Yeah, just helped my neighbor light her candles. Poor thing was alone. Poor thing." The words sank deep. I wasn't angry at him, he meant well. But I hated that phrase. Poor thing. It was the same tone people used when they pitied you, when they saw your loneliness as weakness, not as warning. I closed the notebook firm and final. I didn't want pity. I wanted proof. I started thinking about everything they had ever said, about how my dreams were too big, how I didn't have the right temperament for business, how I should be realistic. I remembered how my father used to laugh when I'd talk about starting something of my own. You can barely keep your plants alive, he'd said once. He was right in a way. I looked over at the plant on my counter, dry, wilted, forgotten. I watered it that night for the first time in weeks, whispering, "If I can bring you back, maybe I can bring myself back too." By 9:30 I'd cleaned every dish, folded the napkins and restored the kitchen to its earlier order. It looked as though no celebration had ever taken place. No mess, no guests, no noise. Just silence and a faint scent of burnt candles. But there was one small difference. On the counter beside the cake box sat the notebook, open, ready. That's when I heard footsteps outside the door. For a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd changed their mind. Maybe my mother had remembered. My heart jumped, traitorous thing still capable of hoping. I stood perfectly still as the footsteps paused, shuffled, then continued down the hall. Someone laughed, not her laugh. A neighbor. Not for me. I exhaled slowly, feeling foolish. But then I smiled, small and steady. The kind of smile you wear when you realize you don't need rescuing anymore. I poured the rest of the wine into the sink, washed the glass and turned off the lights. The apartment sank into darkness, except for the faint glow of the street lamp outside. I sat again by the window, notebook in hand, pen ready. I wrote one last line before closing it for the night. Next year they'll remember. I'll make sure of it. And as the rain began again, tapping softly against the glass, I didn't feel lonely. I felt awake. For the first time in my life, being forgotten didn't hurt. It clarified. It showed me exactly where to start. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked past 10, and in that small apartment, surrounded by silence and unfinished candles, a plan began to breathe. Some birthdays are for wishes. Mine was for promises. And this one they wouldn't forget. The next morning I woke before the sun. The air was still heavy with the scent of last night's rain and burnt wax. My notebook sat open on the table and for once I didn't feel the weight of it. I felt direction. The quiet no longer frightened me, it steadied me. I made coffee, the cheap instant kind that left a bitter aftertaste, and stared out the window as the city began to stir. Delivery trucks. Barking dogs. People with places to be. I wasn't one of them yet. But I would be. That day I went to work early. The office was small, a two-room accounting service downtown where I typed invoices and filed papers for people who never remembered my name. I used to think it was temporary, a step until I found something better. But after that birthday night, the word temporary stopped comforting me. It became a challenge. At lunch I sat alone in the break room writing in my notebook. Only this time the pages weren't about my family. They were ideas. Numbers. Things I'd noticed from clients. How small businesses struggled with bookkeeping, how owners lost money because no one explained the system to them. I started making notes about what they did wrong, what could be easier, what people like me could fix if we just knew how. By the end of that week I had the bones of something. Not a company yet, but a plan. A quiet plan. The neighbor. His name was Daniel. Started checking in every few days. Always polite, never intrusive. Once he brought me homemade soup when he saw I was working late. "You remind me of my sister," he said with a half smile. "She used to study like that, like the world was hers to rewrite." "Maybe it still is," I told him. He laughed softly. "If anyone could, it'd be you." I didn't believe him then. But his words stuck like small matches waiting to catch. Months passed quietly. I worked during the day, studied at night. I took free online classes in accounting, business management, even marketing, sitting at the same kitchen table where my candles once melted. Every night I'd light one small candle before starting, not for celebration but as a reminder that even a small flame could hold back the dark. By the end of the first year I'd built a small client list on the side. Neighbors, friends, people who couldn't afford big firms but needed help sorting taxes or invoices. They paid what they could, sometimes cash, sometimes food, once even a bag of old clothes. Took it all. Every bit counted. My family didn't call that entire year. Not once. My mother sent a Christmas card, and signed, "The kind you buy in bulk and mail to everyone out of guilt." My brother posted pictures of his vacation in Florida with the caption, "Family first." I didn't comment. I didn't even feel the sting anymore. I had something they didn't: momentum. One cold January evening, Daniel knocked again. He looked worried. "You should get some rest," he said. "You've been up too many nights in a row." "I can rest when I build something worth waking up for," I told him. He nodded, then handed me a small black flash drive. "Consider this a head start," he said. "Some templates and tools I used when I started freelancing. It might save you some time." It did more than that. It opened doors I didn't even know existed. By the second year I had a name: Luma Ledger. Simple, practical, something that sounded like light and numbers combined. I designed a logo myself on a free website, printed a few flyers, and started walking door to door to local shops. I offered to handle their monthly bookkeeping for half the price of their current accountant. Most said no. Few said maybe. One bakery owner, Mrs. Jacobs, said yes. Mrs. Jacobs changed everything. She introduced me to other small businesses: a florist, a mechanic, a thrift store owner. Within 6 months, I had 15 clients and my own small rented office. A single desk, one old computer, and a candle on the shelf that I lit every morning before work. It wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was habit. Fire reminded me where I started, and how I burned quietly until I could shine. There were nights I'd fall asleep at the desk, head against the ledger, dreaming in numbers and check marks. And every morning I'd wake up to another small victory. Another bill paid, another client referring a friend, another step away from the girl who once waited for birthday calls. One evening Daniel stopped by the office. "You've built something," he said, looking around with quiet pride. "Something small," I replied. "Small things start fires," he said. "You should be proud." "I'm not there yet," I told him. "Not until I can stand on my own, completely." He smiled, then nodded toward the candle on my desk. "Then keep that burning." And I did. The second year brought challenges. 2 clients defaulted on payments. One tried to underpay me, calling my work a favor. A larger accounting firm sent me a cease and desist letter claiming my name was too similar to theirs. I almost gave up then. But every time I hesitated, I remembered that birthday night. The empty chairs, the untouched cake, the silence. I had survived worse than paperwork. So instead of giving up, I restructured. I filed for a proper business license, changed the name slightly to Luma Financial Services, and hired Daniel part-time to help manage outreach. Felt strange having help, but I trusted him. He was the first person who ever saw me before I became someone worth noticing. By the start of year 3, something shifted. My company wasn't just surviving, it was growing. We moved into a bigger office, hired 2 assistants, and signed our first corporate client, a small chain of grocery stores. The day the contract came through, I sat at my desk, hands trembling, candle flickering beside the paperwork. The flame leaned forward like it was bowing in approval. That night I cooked dinner, real dinner, for the first time in years. I even opened the window and let the winter air in. For once I allowed myself to feel proud. But pride, I realized, was a quiet emotion. It didn't shout or glow. It steadied you. Daniel joined me that evening to celebrate. "You've done it," he said softly. 3 years under the same flame. I smiled. "And it's still burning." He raised his glass. To the woman who turned silence into fire. We laughed, but somewhere inside I felt something else. A tremor. Because I knew the next step wasn't just about building. It was about facing what I'd built it for. That night after he left, I sat at the same table again. Not the one from my old apartment, but it felt similar. I opened the notebook I hadn't touched in months. The pages were yellowed now, but the words were still sharp. They didn't forget. They just didn't care. I turned to the last page and wrote a new line beneath it. Now they will. The next morning the call came. A local magazine wanted to feature me as one of the rising female entrepreneurs of the city. I agreed, not for attention, but for evidence. I wanted my name printed. I wanted it to reach the people who once told me to be realistic. When the issue came out, I left a copy on my mother's porch. No note. No message. Just the magazine folded neatly with my photo on the cover, standing beside my office door, candle faintly visible on the desk behind me. 2 weeks later I received a voicemail. It was my sister. "Hey Maria. Wow, I saw your article. That's amazing. We were just talking about you the other day. Mom said we should all meet soon. Maybe dinner next weekend." Her voice was cheerful, rehearsed, as if 3 years of silence had never happened. I replayed it twice, not for sentiment, for study. Every tone, every pause, every smile between her words sounded practiced. I didn't delete it. I saved it. Then I lit another candle. Not for comfort this time, for strategy. 3 years had passed. They had taught me everything I needed to know. How to survive, how to build, and how to wait. But the next chapter wouldn't be about waiting. It would be about return. Not mine, theirs. The magazine had barely been out for a week when my phone started lighting up again. Unknown numbers. Random messages. Old contacts I hadn't heard from since college suddenly remembered my name. At first, I ignored them, thinking it was coincidence. But then one morning as I was reviewing client reports, the front desk called. "There's a group asking for you," my assistant said. "They say they're family." For a moment I thought she was mistaken. Family? The word felt foreign in that building. I looked out through the glass wall and saw them, my mother, my sister, and my brother, standing awkwardly in the lobby, clutching a cake box and a bouquet that looked far too polished to be sincere. My stomach tightened. 3 years of silence dissolved into that single sight. I smoothed my blouse, steadying my breath. "Send them in," I said. When they walked into my office, the air changed. My mother smiled first, that old polished smile she used whenever she wanted something. My sister followed, overdressed, smelling of perfume and nerves. My brother lingered near the doorway, pretending to admire the framed newspaper clippings on the wall. "Maria," my mother said warmly, voice trembling just enough to sound human. "We saw the article. We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Proud. The word landed heavy. I motioned toward the chairs across from my desk. "Sit," I said. My tone was calm, almost polite. The same tone they'd once used with me when they didn't want me around too long. My sister placed the cake box on my desk, smiling too wide. "We thought we'd surprise you. You've done so well. Forbes mentioned your company last month, right?" I nodded slowly. They did. My brother finally spoke, voice casual but tight. "You've really built something here, huh? We always knew you would." I almost laughed at that. Always knew. Instead I leaned back and folded my hands. 3 years, I said softly. "That's a long time to remember." My mother's eyes flickered. "We wanted to give you space, Maria. You were busy." I tilted my head. "You mean invisible?" A small silence filled the room. The hum of the AC became louder. My sister started picking at her nails. My mother's hand tightened around her purse strap. Then she smiled again, this time too quickly. "Anyway," she said, "we didn't come here to talk about the past. We wanted to celebrate and maybe discuss something that could be good for all of us." There was something for all of us. I said nothing, only gestured for them to continue. My brother cleared his throat and pulled out a folded envelope. "We've been talking about starting a family investment," he said. "Property, maybe small businesses. And well, you're the successful one now. We thought we could all work together. You know, keep it in the family." I watched his hands tremble slightly as he laid the envelope down. I didn't open it. My mother leaned forward, voice honeyed. "Your success is our success, darling. We always believed in you. And now we can all benefit." I smiled faintly. Benefit? I repeated. Interesting word. My sister chimed in quickly, trying to soften the tension. We're family, Maria. Whatever happened before, it's in the past. Let's start fresh. I stood up then, walked to the window and looked down at the city below. People crossing streets, horns, wind moving through the flags on nearby buildings. From up here everything looked orderly, clean, as if betrayal didn't exist. Do you know what I used to do 3 years ago? I asked quietly. They exchanged uncertain glances. My brother shrugged. Work. Same as now. No, I said, turning around. I used to wait. My mother frowned slightly. Wait. For calls. For birthdays. For someone to remember I existed. Their faces shifted. Embarrassment, defensiveness, something close to fear. I didn't press it. I wasn't ready to yet. I just smiled again, gentle and composed. You came here with an investment proposal, I said. Let's do this properly. Come to my house on Sunday evening. We'll have dinner. You can tell me everything then. My mother's relief was instant. Oh, Maria, that sounds wonderful. Just like old times. I nodded. Exactly like old times. When they left, I stood by the window for a long time. The bouquet they'd brought sat untouched on my desk, its petals too perfect to be real. I reached out and brushed one between my fingers. Plastic. Of course. That night, Daniel came by to drop off some signed documents. He saw the flowers and raised an eyebrow. Celebration. Something like that, I said. He studied me for a moment. You've got that look again. What look? The one you had the night I met you. The one that means someone's about to regret underestimating you. I didn't deny it. I just smiled, slow and calm. Sunday dinner, I said. It's going to be memorable. Sunday came. I spent the morning preparing the house. Not decorating, just cleaning, arranging, observing. The table was set for 4, the same number as the family who once forgot me. I chose my best dishes not out of sentiment but symbolism. The same ones they mocked when I'd bought them years ago, calling them too fancy for your little apartment. At 5 sharp the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw them standing there, dressed like guests in a mansion that wasn't theirs. My mother's perfume hit first. Sharp, expensive, suffocating. My sister carried another cake, white frosting and gold ribbons. My brother held a thick envelope. The air felt charged, almost cinematic. Come in, I said softly. They stepped inside, murmuring compliments about the house. Oh, Maria, you've done well for yourself, my mother said, running a finger along a photo frame. So elegant. I guided them to the dining room. The candles were already lit, 6 this time, 3 on each side of the table. The light flickered softly against the glass. Dinner began politely. My mother asked about my company. My sister laughed too loudly at everything I said. My brother avoided eye contact. Between each course I watched their faces, how their expressions tightened whenever money was mentioned, how they leaned forward every time I hinted at expansion or profits. They were listening not to me but to opportunity. Halfway through dessert, my mother finally spoke the line she'd rehearsed. Maria, dear, we were hoping you might help us get started with the new family venture. Just a small contribution from your side, to show unity. I set down my fork and dabbed my lips with the napkin. How small? My brother slid the envelope across the table. Just a few $100,000 to start. We'll handle the rest. I smiled. That's quite a family project. My sister leaned forward. You're doing so well, Maria. Think of it as giving back. You've always been generous. The word generous stung more than I expected. I stared at the candle flames dancing in the air, and for a second, it felt like my old birthday night. The same glow, the same heat, but a completely different woman sitting in front of it. I'll consider it, I said finally. But I'll need to review the paperwork first. My brother grinned, relieved. Of course. I brought everything you'll need. I reached across the table and took the envelope. Inside were contracts, handwritten notes, even a business plan printed from a template. I didn't read them right then. I just nodded slowly, pretending interest. You've put in a lot of effort, I said. My mother smiled, touching my hand. Because we believe in you, darling. Always have. Her hand was soft, warm, and completely unfamiliar. After dinner I walked them to the door. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "It feels good to be close again." I nodded against her shoulder. Yes, I said. It really does. When they were gone, I stood by the door for a long time. The house felt heavier, as if their perfume and voices lingered behind. I looked at the empty chairs and half-burned candles, and for the first time I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. They hadn't come back for me. They'd come back for what I became. I carried the envelope to my office upstairs and spread the papers across the desk. Every line, every clause, every signature space spoke the same language: greed dressed as family. But between those lines I saw something else. Opportunity. I turned off the main light, leaving only the candle burning beside me. Its small flame bent slightly in the draft, steady but dangerous. I stared at it for a long time, feeling its heat on my skin, until one thought crystallized in my mind. They taught me how to survive without love. Now I'd teach them what love without gain feels like. And as the last candle flickered, I smiled. Not the polite smile I used for clients. The real one, the one that meant the game had finally begun. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in my office, surrounded by the glow of a single candle and the stack of papers my family had handed me, their proposal. I read every page carefully, each word confirming what I already knew. It wasn't a business plan. It was a trap wearing polite language. The contracts placed control of my assets under a family trust they would manage. My signature, once inked, would quietly hand them everything I had built. By sunrise I had made my decision. I brewed coffee and called my lawyer Mr. Adams, an older man with kind eyes and an even sharper mind. We'd worked together for 2 years, long enough for him to know I never wasted words. "Mr. Adams," I said, sliding the phone between my shoulder and ear as I gathered the papers, "I need you to come by the house this evening. Bring your briefcase and your patience." He chuckled softly. "That sounds serious." "It is," I said. "But not loud serious. Quiet serious." He understood immediately. "I'll be there at 6. When I hung up, I stared at the contracts again, running my finger over the bold signatures they had left blank. So sure I'd fill the spaces. For years they'd taught me to believe my worth depended on them. And now they'd come back hoping I'd forgotten the lesson. I hadn't. I'd rewritten it. All day I moved like a ghost, calm, deliberate, efficient. My assistants handled the calls at the office. Daniel stopped by to drop off reports and noticed the papers spread across my desk. "You're planning something," he said. I didn't deny it. "Dinner tonight," I said. "It'll be important." "Important like forgiveness important or revenge important?" I smiled faintly. "Both maybe. Sometimes they look the same from a distance." He tilted his head. "Want me there?" "Yes. But not at the table. Behind it." He didn't ask why. He just nodded, understanding the language of quiet plans. By 5:30 the house glowed with soft amber light. The same candles I'd used for Sunday dinner were replaced with taller ones, steadier flames. I wore navy blue, strong, clean, unassuming. Power, I'd learned, didn't always need red. The table was set with precision. 4 plates, polished silver wine glasses that caught the candlelight just enough to shimmer. Beside my seat, a single brown envelope, the real documents Mr. Adams had prepared, waited patiently. At exactly 6 the doorbell rang. My family arrived with the same eager smiles, the same perfume, the same rehearsed charm. My mother kissed my cheek as if 3 years of distance were nothing but a pause. "I told Anna to bake the dessert herself this time," she said brightly. My sister laughed. "I didn't, but let's pretend I did." Even my brother seemed relaxed, too relaxed. "I brought the new draft," he said, tapping his coat pocket. "Just a few adjustments to make things clearer." I nodded calmly. "Perfect timing. Let's eat first." We sat. The air was warm, filled with the aroma of roasted vegetables, lemon butter chicken, and faint cinnamon from the pie cooling near the window. Everything smelled like peace, which of course made it the perfect disguise for what it wasn't. Dinner began like before. Compliments, laughter, small talk about weather and neighbors, each of them pretending to care about my day. I responded politely, never missing a beat. But under the table my right foot tapped against the floor, not out of nerves but control. Halfway through the meal my mother leaned back, folding her napkin neatly. "Maria, darling, we brought the updated documents. We thought you might appreciate the clarity before we move forward." "Clarity is always good," I said softly. "Why don't we handle it here while everyone's present?" My sister's eyes lit up. "Oh, perfect. Let's get it done tonight. I reached for the brown envelope beside me and placed it gently next to their folder. The candles flickered between us, casting small, gold reflections on the glass table. Before we begin, I said, I'd like to propose a small change. My brother frowned slightly. Change? I smiled. Yes. If we're truly doing this as a family, it should be equal. Transparent. Don't you agree? Of course, my mother said quickly. We trust you completely. That's good, I said. Because I trust you too. I nodded toward the doorway. Mr. Adams stepped in quietly, carrying his briefcase. My family turned, startled. Oh, my mother said, laughing nervously. You brought a lawyer? Is that necessary? For clarity, I replied simply. You said it yourself. Mr. Adams opened the briefcase, laid out his pen, and began unfolding documents. Not theirs, but mine. New pages, clean, precise, carrying a different set of terms. These, I said, tapping the first page, are the official contracts to formalize our partnership. But with updated protections for all parties involved. My brother leaned forward, trying to read the print. Protections. Yes, I said evenly. To ensure the assets remain stable. Once signed, the holdings transfer into a single entity, my company. Luma Financial Services will oversee everything. That way there's accountability. My sister blinked, confused. Wait, that means... It means, I said, still calm, everything passes through me. As a safeguard. Temporary, of course. The silence that followed was perfect. A mix of confusion and slow, dawning realization. My mother cleared her throat. Maria, that's not what we discussed. I met her eyes. No. It's what I decided. The candlelight shimmered on their faces. A trio of ghosts flickering between greed and fear. Mr. Adams handed each of them a pen. If you'd like to proceed, he said professionally. My brother shifted in his seat. We should review this later. Maybe with our own counsel. I thought we trusted each other, I interrupted softly. He froze. My mother's smile tightened. Of course we do, dear. But this seems... sudden. Sudden. I tilted my head. So was your visit. Daniel appeared from the hallway then, silent as shadow, standing behind them like part of the wall. My family didn't notice at first, but my sister caught his reflection in the window and jumped slightly. Who's that? She whispered. My security head, I said casually. He's here for verification, to witness the signing. You understand? Business standards. My brother scoffed quietly. Security? Against family. I smiled. No, for family. For a long minute no one spoke. The air thickened, the kind of silence that feels like waiting for lightning to strike. Then my mother, ever the diplomat, reached for the pen. Fine, she said. If this makes you feel comfortable, we'll sign. We're not hiding anything. She signed first. My sister followed, hesitant but obedient. My brother hesitated longest, staring at me across the table. You've changed, he said under his breath. I had to, I replied. You taught me how. When the last signature was on paper, Mr. Adams collected the documents and sealed them into his case. Done, he said quietly. Effective immediately. I exhaled slowly. The candles trembled in the draft as though they understood what had just shifted. After dinner we moved to the living room. My mother poured herself another glass of wine, trying to fill the silence. My sister complimented the decor again, her laughter thin. My brother stood by the window looking out at the streetlights. So, my mother said lightly, I suppose everything's settled now. Almost, I said. I walked to the fireplace mantel and picked up an old photo. The four of us taken years ago. I held it for a moment, tracing the frame with my thumb. Do you remember this? I asked. My sister squinted. Oh, that was after your graduation. Yes, I said softly. The night you all left early. Said you had better places to be. My mother sighed. Maria, please. No, I interrupted gently. It's fine. I just wanted to remember how far we've come. I placed the photo back on the mantel, but not before slipping a folded page beneath it. The copy of the contract's ownership clause. A small gesture. A quiet record of how things changed. When they finally left, the house felt lighter. I walked them to the door, smiling the way I had 3 years ago when I'd wished they'd stay. Only this time I wished them gone. As the door closed, I turned off the main lights and stood in the flicker of the candles again. The wax had melted deep, forming small pools that reflected gold. On the table sat the signed documents, the same tool they had brought to take from me now fully reversed in purpose. For a moment I let myself breathe, not in triumph but relief. The kind that feels like exhaling years of being unseen. The flame beside me fluttered once, then steadied again. I smiled at it quietly. Almost done, I whispered. But not quite. Because what they'd signed tonight wasn't just paper. It was the beginning of their education. They had come for my success. Soon they'd understand what it cost. And this time I'd be the one teaching the lesson. The next morning I sat at my kitchen table. Same spot, same candle, but a different woman behind it. The contracts were already filed, notarized, and transferred. Every asset they thought they'd share now legally belonged to my company. There was no undoing it. No fine print to hide behind. As the sunlight spread across the counter, I realized something strange. I didn't feel victorious. I felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after years of noise. It wasn't revenge that filled the room. It was clarity. I brewed coffee, strong and bitter, and thought about how many mornings I'd started just like this. Waiting for messages that never came, birthdays that never mattered. But this morning, the silence meant peace, not loneliness. Still, peace has a way of being interrupted. Around noon my phone rang. My brother's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Maria, what the hell is this?" His voice was shaking, not from anger, from panic. "The lawyer says everything's under your name. That's not what we agreed on." I leaned back in my chair, watching the candle's small flame dance. "It's exactly what we agreed on. You signed it yourself." "You tricked us," he shouted. I smiled faintly. "No. I clarified things. You're the one who didn't read the fine print." There was a pause. I could hear muffled voices in the background. My mother, my sister, both talking over each other. Then my mother's voice cut through, sharp and trembling. "Maria, sweetheart, we can fix this. You just need to adjust the paperwork. You know we never meant to." "To what?" I interrupted softly. "To take what I built." "No. Of course not, we just wanted to be part of it." "You were part of it," I said. "You were the reason I built it. Every late night, every empty birthday, every silence. You were all there in the background cheering me on with absence." My sister's voice broke in next, high-pitched and tearful. "We made mistakes, okay? But this is cruel, Maria. We're family." I stared at the candle, its wax dripping down the side like slow tears. "Family is supposed to protect each other," I said quietly. "You didn't protect me. You erased me. I just learned to live without you, and now you'll learn to live without what's mine." I ended the call. The phone rang again immediately, then again. I muted it. The silence after each ring was louder than any apology. That afternoon I met Mr. Adams at his office. The ink on the filings was barely dry. He looked at me with a mix of respect and concern. "They'll fight this," he said. "I know. Are you ready for that?" "I've been ready since the night no one came to my door." He nodded slowly, then slid a folder toward me. "These are your copies. It's airtight. You don't owe them an explanation, but..." He paused. "You might owe yourself one." I smiled. I already gave myself one. As I left, the winter air hit my face. Crisp, honest, sharp. For the first time in years I didn't rush home. I stopped at a small shop near the corner, the kind that sold cheap candles in handmade frames. There was one that caught my eye. Carved wood, simple, with a single word burned into it. Endure. I bought it. When I returned home, Daniel was waiting outside. He held a box in his hands, small, tied with twine. "I figured today was a big one," he said. I opened the box. Inside was a new candle, white, thick, elegant, with a faint scent of cedar. "For your office," he said. "Fresh start." I laughed softly. "I think this one's more of an ending." "Same thing sometimes," he said, smiling. I invited him in for tea. He didn't ask about the papers or the calls or the look on my face. Instead, he told me about a stray cat that had been living under his porch, how it refused food from everyone except him. "It waits," he said, "no matter how cold it gets." I nodded slowly. Some things learn to survive in silence. He looked at me for a long moment. You did more than survive, Maria. I didn't respond. I just stared at the flame between us, small, calm, alive. By evening, the phone stopped ringing. I thought that was the end of it until a message appeared from my mother. No apologies this time, just desperation. You win. Please, let's hope. We're at the house. My house. I sat there for a moment staring at the screen, then grabbed my coat and keys. The drive was short. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on, the same one I'd left glowing after dinner. Through the window I saw them, all three pacing, arguing. I walked in quietly. They froze when they saw me. My mother was the first to speak. Maria, please. We didn't mean for this to get ugly. It was ugly long before this, I said softly. My brother stepped forward. You've made your point. You wanted to hurt us and you did. But we can fix this. Just reverse it. You don't want to destroy your own family. I looked around the room. The furniture they'd once mocked for being too plain, the photos they'd never cared to appear in. Every inch of this house had been built with my silence. I'm not destroying my family, I said. I'm freeing myself from it. My sister started crying. You don't mean that. I turned to her. Do you remember when I turned 29? She blinked, confused. What? The night you said you might come if you weren't too tired. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I waited all night. Do you know who showed up? A stranger. He lit my candles because no one else did. My mother's eyes filled with tears. We were wrong, Maria. We should have been there. Yes, I said. You should have. But you weren't. And the thing about absence, once you learn to live with it, you stop needing what left you. She reached for me, but I stepped back. You taught me love was conditional, I said. Now I've learned control doesn't have to be. My brother slammed his fist against the table. You think this makes you powerful? I looked at him, calm, steady, almost kind. No. It makes me free. He turned away, cursing under his breath. My mother began to sob quietly, her shoulders shaking. My sister sank into a chair, whispering something I couldn't hear. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I simply walked to the table where the candles still burned, the same one from dinner night. I reached out, lifted it, and set it in the center of the room. This, I said, is all that's left between us. Light. Or darkness. You chose darkness years ago. Then slowly I blew it out. The smoke curled upward, soft and thin, before vanishing into the air. They didn't say a word. None of them moved. For a few seconds, the only sound was the faint crackle of wax cooling. I turned, grabbed my coat, and walked toward the door. My mother called after me, voice trembling. Maria, wait. What do we do now? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Start over, I said. The way I had to. Then I walked out. Outside the night was cold, crisp, silent. I stood on the porch, breathing in the air that no longer carried anyone else's name. For years I'd defined myself by what I'd lost. Their love, their presence, their approval. But as I looked up at the quiet sky, I realized I hadn't lost anything. I'd been clearing space. I drove home slowly, taking the long route through the old streets I used to walk when I couldn't afford a bus fare. Every turn reminded me of who I was then. A woman waiting for someone to light her candles. When I reached home, I took out the new candle Daniel had given me and placed it on my desk. I didn't light it right away. I just stared at it, perfectly untouched, perfectly patient. Finally, I struck the match. The flame caught, small but confident. The room filled with the faint scent of cedar, warm and alive. I sat back, watching it burn, and whispered to the air. You taught me silence, and I built an empire from it. The flame wavered, steady and strong. This time I didn't blow it out. I let it burn, quietly, fully, beautifully. Because some endings aren't meant to fade. They're meant to shine. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more tales of strength, silence, and sweet revenge. Every week, another woman reclaims her power. One quiet story at a time.